for any radio station to take, as over 250 are. We turn now to Europe, where many are concerned about the growing acceptability of anti-immigrant rhetoric and policies. Far from just being expressed by the extreme right, the anti-immigrant trend has entered the mainstream. German Chancellor Angela Merkel told a gathering of young members of her conservative Christian Democratic Union Party this weekend that multiculturalism has utterly failed.
In Frankfurt am Main ist bei den Kindern unter 5 Jahren von 3 Kindern.
In Frankfurt on the Main, 2 out of 3 children under the age of 5 have an immigrant background. We are a country which at the beginning of the 1960s actually brought guest workers to Germany. Now they live with us, and we lied to ourselves for a while, saying that they won't stay and that they will disappear one day. That's not the reality. This multicultural approach, saying that we simply live side by side and are happy about each other, this approach has failed, utterly failed.
The German Chancellor later added immigrants were welcome in Germany and that Islam is a part of the nation's modern-day culture. Her comments are seen as part of a rightward shift and come just days after a study by the center-left Friedrich Ebert Foundation found that more than 30% of people believe Germany is, quote, overrun by foreigners. A similar number believed immigrants had come to Germany for its social benefits and, quote, should be sent home when jobs are scarce. Earlier this year, a book by an influential bank executive in Germany created an uproar because it blamed the decline of German nationhood on the alleged failure of many immigrants to integrate. As the debates rage on in Europe, I'm joined here in New York by a controversial public intellectual who's been called the Elvis of cultural theory. Yes, I'm talking about the Slovenian philosopher and critic Slavoj Žižek. He's the author of over 30 books. His latest, From Verso, is just out, and it's called Living in the End Times. In a recent piece for the Guardian newspaper of London, he argues that across Europe, the politics of the far right is infecting everyone with the need for a reasonable anti-immigration policy. Well, Slavoj Žižek, welcome to Democracy Now!
Glad to be here, thank you.
Put everything together for us, from Angela Merkel talking about the end of multiculturalism, even what that means, multiculturalism, to the mass protests that are taking place in France and beyond.
I really think that usually we Europeans were a little bit arrogant, like we are the model of tolerance and so on. Now something horrible has happened, and what is really worrying is that it's not only the countries, the parts of Europe that we usually associate with intolerance, like Southeastern Europe, Romania, Hungary, and so on. It's even the very models of tolerance, Netherlands, Norway, and so on. What really worries me is, I will say something very simple, almost commonsensical, that, you know, for me, I'm here always for censorship. True democracy, tolerance in an authentic sense, means that you simply cannot say certain things publicly. You are considered, you know, like if you say publicly an anti-Semitic sexist joke, it's unacceptable. Things which were unacceptable 10, 15 years ago are now acceptable. And what I really am worried about is how the far right, what was 20 years ago the domain of the far right, is setting, even if they are a minority, they are setting the general agenda. The typical rhetorical trick here is in 2 moves. First, you of course condemn the far right, no place in our developed democracy, but then you add, but they are addressing the real worries of the people, and so on and so on. So, precisely, that's the dirty, sophistic trick, in order to prevent hatred outbursts, we have to control the situation. You know what is significant about Sarrazin, the banker that you mentioned? You know that he was politically close to social democracy.
Which means?
Which means that they really, the extreme right, imposed their topic onto everyone. But let me tell you now something which may surprise you. I, of course, don't accept this horrible logic. We have to do it more modestly to prevent real outbursts. But I think there is a failure in this standard liberal multicultural vision, which means every ethnic group, whatever, to itself, all we need is a neutral legal framework guaranteeing the coexistence of groups. sorry if I shock someone, but I think we do need what Germans call Leitkultur, a leading culture. Just, it shouldn't be nationally defined. We should fight for that. Yes, I agree with right-wingers. We need a set of values accepted by all. But what will these values be, my God? We neglected this a little bit. You know that it's not just this abstract liberal model, you have your world, I have my world, we just need a neutral legal network, how we will politely ignore each other. My second point would have been that it's absolutely crucial how this anti-immigrant explosion is linked to the withdrawal of leftist politics, especially in the matters of economy and so on. It is as if the left being obsessed by the idea that we shouldn't appear as reactionary in the economic sense. That is to say that no, we are not the old trade union representatives of the working class. We are for postmodern digital capitalism and so on. They don't want to touch the working class or so-called lower ordinary people, and here right-wingers enter. Do you know the horrible paradox is that, apart from some small leftist fringe parties, the only serious political force in Europe today which still is ready to appeal to the ordinary working people are the right-wing anti-immigrants. So you see, we, the leftists, we have no right, absolutely no right to take this arrogant view of offended, tolerant people, oh, horror. No, we should ask the question how we enabled what is going on.
I want to ask you about this Christian Science Monitor poll that showed 13% of Germans would welcome the arrival of a new Führer. More than a third of Germans feel the country is overrun by foreigners. Roughly 60% would restrict the practice of Islam, and 17% believe Jews have too much influence. 13% would welcome the arrival of a new Führer.
I think, now again, I will maybe shock you, but, you know, don't exaggerate the meaning of this. No, I think that, okay, my first thesis, that Germany, and this makes it all the more tragic, from my personal experience, Germany is, for example, far more effectively in everyday life tolerant than France, for example. I claim with all responsibility. It's not as general as it may appear. Go to mixed part of ex-West Berlin and so on, you will still see wonderful collaborations. Don't worry about this. What I'm just saying is that we shouldn't get too fascinated by these details. We should ask more fundamental questions. Like, this is for me only part of a general shift, which I mentioned in the text you kindly referred to, how the whole political mapping of Europe is changing in a horrible way. To cut a long story short, very briefly, till now